By the end of this video, you'll know how Claude Cowork works, and you'll have a workbook full of your own notes to go with it. If you want access to that free workbook, the link is down below in the description. I hope you like it. I spent around 6 hours making it. Let's get started. Now, you should have your workbook open either on a second monitor, on your current screen. If you're super hardcore, I hope you have it completely printed out. Just a heads up, this workbook actually is for my in-person Claude Cowork workshops. So you'll see some things that apply for my in-person folks that might not apply to you guys. For example, there are some places that say raise your hand, but obviously if you guys did that on this YouTube video, I would have no idea. So with that out of the way, the first thing I wanted to start with is I hope you guys know by watching this video, you're early. And I think this visualization demonstrates that very well. If you look closely, you'll notice that this entire square is made up of other little tiny squares. Well, what's really cool is that every square represents about 3.2 million people. And so in totality, this is 8 billion people. But the colors and how they're distributed is where the graph starts to get really interesting. So every gray box represents someone who has never used AI. Every green box represents free chatbot users, so people who use ChatGPT and Claude and just ask them questions similar to how they use Google. The yellow boxes represent people who pay $20 a month for AI. And then the red represents people who use AI as a coding scaffold. We won't get into what exactly this means, but this is just a fancy way to say that they use ChatGPT and Claude to help them code. Now, you're probably asking, Timothy, why are you going over this, or why do you care? It's because by the very act of you being interested in not just Claude Cowork, but AI in general, it gives you such a leg up on people around the world because, guys, I can't emphasize this to you enough, but we are still so early. So if you work on mastering these tools while you can, then that'll give you a huge advantage for everything you do from this point forward. Moving on to page 3 of this workshop, I wanted to explain a little bit around the philosophy of how and why I put this together. So on the left side, you have how workshops are typically done or usually done. You sit there and people talk at you and they throw all of these concepts. And then towards the end, maybe they give you an example or two of how those concepts apply to an actual real world problem. That is one way of learning, but in my opinion, that has never really landed with me. And the reason for that is actually really interesting. And it's because you aren't learning those concepts in context of an actual issue or problem. So I'll give you a great example of this. Elon Musk has a great video where he describes how he thinks about learning. And he gives an example of someone trying to learn what a wrench does. Well, if they studied what a wrench does in a textbook, maybe the textbook will say, hey, this is a tool that fastens and tightens nuts and bolts. Okay, that's interesting. So I memorized that this tool fastens and loosens nuts and bolts. But that information or that learning doesn't really land and stick with you because you're not applying it to an actual issue that you're facing. So he says that a better way to learn what a wrench does, and this is fascinating, is start with the problem first. So if you're thinking about a wrench, let's say that I need to fasten something against the bottom of a car. Well, I'm looking at this piece hanging from the bottom of the car, and I'm like, okay, how can I fasten this to the bottom of it so it isn't hanging anymore? Well, let me think about what the actual issue is. It looks like this nut is loose. So if that nut is loose, then how can I tighten it? And then, oh wait, that's where the wrench comes in. So you aren't learning what the wrench does by just reading about it in a book, but you're starting with the problem first and then seeing how the concept or the tool of a wrench fits into that. Now, the reason I wanted to walk through that is because that is how today's workshop is, or that's how today's workshop was built, which is we are going to start with problems. And then after we address those problems, we're going to see the concepts that build up into that problem. So with all that being said, long story short of it is we won't learn the concepts first. We'll meet them as they show up. Moving on to page 4 of the workbook, we just have the agenda and some quick action items before we start. So for the agenda, essentially we are going to be tackling 3 different problems, and each of those problems will increase in quote unquote difficulty. They won't be too hard, so don't worry. But before we start, there are 2 things that I need y'all to do. First and foremost, I need you to make sure that you have Claude Cowork open on your computer. And yes, this will require the $20 a month subscription plan. So please pause this video and go down in the description to see instructions on how to do this if you don't already have it on your computer. And then if you do have it on your computer, then please continue with this video. Make sure that you are signed in. And then for these 3 bullet points here, don't worry about it because it's for my in-person folks. So once you have Claude Cowork open and you are signed in, then let's get started. Here is the first problem that we are going to be addressing today, y'all. And this one's going to be interesting because if you've never used an LLM or AI tool, quote unquote, that can live on your computer, then you're going to be surprised. So the first problem that we are addressing today is, I don't know about you guys, but my computer is an absolute mess. Whether it's my desktop or my downloads folder, everything is completely unorganized and everything is just spread out all over the place. Well, with that being the problem that we have today, well, how can we address it? What's really cool is that Claude Cowork can help us do that. So the first thing is I want everyone to pause the video and then pick the messiest folder on your computer. And once you have done that, then let's move on to the next page. Now that you're on page 6, the first thing I want you to do is in Claude Cowork, you'll see a screen like this here. And for the folder that you chose to work with today, that is extremely messy, what you're going to do is you're going to hit this drop down. You're going to hit choose a different folder, and then you're going to hit the specific folder that we're going to be working with today. I'm going to do downloads. And I'm going to hit allow. Once you have decided what folder that you want to organize, I need you to come into Claude Cowork here, hit this drop-down menu, and hit choose a different folder, and select the folder that we will be working with today. I'm going to hit downloads and hit allow. Once you have that set up, then we can get started. Now, all I want you to do is take this prompt here, and all you need to do is copy it and paste it into Claude Cowork here. Now, what this is doing is it's saying, hi Claude, I have this folder that I want to be organized. I want you to take a look at it and give me a recommendation and plan on how you think it should be organized. Don't worry, Claude is not going to delete anything and it's not going to make any changes as long as you have not approved it yet. So once you do approve those changes, then it'll start working in that folder and we're going to get to see that together. Now, hit enter. Claude is going to take a second to look at your folder, and eventually it's going to make some recommendations on how it thinks you can organize it. What's also cool too is we'll see here, it might also suggest if you want it to delete duplicates. So for example, sometimes if you take the same screenshot twice and you didn't delete the second duplicate or the second file of those 2 screenshots, Claude will sometimes be able to recognize the duplicates and then say, hey, do you want me to delete those for you? While this is running, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to turn it back on whenever, it looks like we're here. Great. So Yours would look different than this, obviously, because we have different folders. But essentially, what Claude has done is it has looked through all of my downloads, or all of the files in my download folder, I should say, and it has categorized them into its recommendation on what I think or how it thinks I should organize things. And I kid you not, but there is a lot in this downloads folder. And look, we have the duplicate epidemic that I was mentioning to you guys earlier. So here, Claude is presenting its proposed organization plan. And on your end, I want you to pause the video here, take a look at the plan, and if you're good with it, then hit play and we'll continue. Now that you have reviewed the plan for organizing your folder, all you need to do is come into here and copy and paste this prompt, or you can type it. This is a pretty short prompt, and you just say, looks good, show me what you did in the end. And I'm going to add a piece here of don't worry about the action items you mentioned for me to act on. Just put those in a folder called follow up later. Great. So all I did here was copy and pasted the prompt from the workbook. Also, I just said, hey, for the items that you wanted me to act on, I plan to do those later. So just put those in a follow later folder so I remember. Okay, so we are going to hit enter, and you're going to be able to see Claude working locally on your computer and organizing that folder with the plan that it laid out for you. And if you've never done this before or experienced an AI agent working on your computer, it's going to be pretty cool to see for the first time. So I'm going to hit enter, and once this is finished, I'll continue and resume the video. So I'm going to pause it now, and let's see what happens. Claude is still working on organizing my downloads folder, but for you guys, I definitely recommend you have your downloads folder open, or whatever folder it's working on, so that you can see it happening in real time. If we just look, look what's happening here. It's taking everything in this folder and organizing it for me. So I'm not manually having to do anything. What's also really cool too is if you take a look at the top right-hand corner of Claude Cowork, you'll be able to see the progress you'll be able to see the progress markers for Claude Cowork and follow along with what it's doing. So that's the other neat part of this entire process, is you can get a detailed view of what's actually happening on your computer and what it's doing. I'm going to give it a second to finish, so I'm going to pause the recording and start things back up once that's done. Claude is almost finished, and I wanted to show y'all one pop-up that came up for me, especially for the people that are worried about Claude making a change to your computer that is irreversible. Claude will always prompt you if you give it permission to permanently delete files. So if you don't want it to delete anything, all you need to say is deny. And if you want to allow it, all you need to do is hit allow. So I'm going to hit deny. And once you do that, it'll always give you a note of what it is leaving alone and where it's going to put it. Claude has now successfully organized my downloads folder, and it looks so much better than before. So once Claude finishes this task, there's a few different sections to what it communicates back to you that are interesting for you to know. First off, it gives you a high level of the organization structure that it executed on. It gives you a review of what went where. The most important part of this for me, though, is usually the bottom two sections, which is couldn't do and couldn't do for you in a specific instance. So this part is important because it's always good to know what Claude didn't do based off of the instruction that you gave it initially, so that you always know to follow up on cleaning up those little items that you wanted to be accomplished that couldn't be done by Claude. Now, I hope your folder looks as organized as this, and I hope ideas are starting to pop up in your head of what this actually means to have the ability for an AI to work on your computer, which is just crazy. Now, what I want you to do is please just pause the video here and think about how long would this have taken you manually? And what's another folder you'd like to run this on? Once you have thought about that for a little bit, and if you have it printed out and you've actually written it down, then let's go on and move to page 7. We worked on organizing an unorganized folder on our computer. That was the problem. When something is unorganized, it's hard for us to keep track of anything. So, what is the concept that builds up to that problem that we just worked on? Well, fundamentally, when it comes to AIs working on your computer, folder access is a huge thing that you have to understand, which is AIs have two options. They can either be restricted to work on specific folders on your computer. So for example, today, and what we just did, I specifically restricted it to only working on my downloads folder. The second instance, though, which is really interesting, is some people let AI have access to their entire computer. And I don't know if you've heard of this thing called OpenClaw, but it essentially went viral a couple of months ago. And what people did was they bought Mac Minis to serve purely as a computer that their AI agent could work on. So if you think about what we did today, it was sort of the appetizer. It was just a taste of what's possible. But imagine when an AI has access to your entire computer and it's able, and that will give it the ability to do so much more. But that comes with a caveat, which is just because it has access to more parts of your computer doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be more productive, because there are significant risks that come with that. That's why people bought those Mac Minis, because they want to make sure it's restricted in an environment that doesn't have anything personal for that person that implemented that Mac Mini or installed or bought that Mac Mini. That is so interesting. And I hope that really drives home how important folder access is in this world of AI agents being able to work locally on our computers. To summarize, Claude can see, read, and change files inside a folder you mount, just like a person sitting at your computer could. Now, let's move on to problem number 2. For problem number 2, we are going to build a briefing on a topic that you want to stay up to date about. And this briefing will actually update on its own, and we're going to see that once we start the problem. But first, what I need you to do is think about what's a topic that you want to stay up to date about. I've added some examples here. It can be a company, it can be events in your area, a trend, a sports, stocks, or something else. It's completely up to you. So for me, for this video, my topic, I'm going to do peptides. I've been interested about this health trend lately and would just like to learn more and stay up to date. So please pause this video, think about what topic you would like to stay up to date about, and please just make sure that it is something you genuinely care about, because if you don't, then you won't really get to see the value or purpose in it. Once you're done with that, then let's resume the video. Once you have your topic, let's go to Claude Cowork and let's open a new window. I'm gonna hit new task. So all I did is come up to the left-hand corner, new task, and all you need to do is copy this prompt paste it in, replace this placeholder with your topic. So I'm going to say peptides. And remember how we talked about folder access for your computer and where Claude works? Well, for problem 2, we're going to have a file that Claude creates. So all you want to do is choose the specific folder where you want that file to go. I'm just going to keep mine in downloads for now, but it's completely up to you guys. Once you have copy and pasted this prompt in and added your topic, I'm going to hit enter. Now, I'm going to give this a second to run and pause the video, and I'll resume it once it's finished, and we'll be able to start problem 2 officially. Now, once you enter your prompt, Claude is going to ask you a few specific questions. So I'm going to answer these questions and make sure you guys do this on your end as well. Which slice of the peptide world do you want this snapshot to cover? I'm going to hit compounded and wellness peptides. While this is running, I want to talk about something really important Claude just did there, which is it asked a clarifying question for additional context. And the reason it did that is because there's multiple different directions that it could have taken this peptide update briefing for me, but it wanted to take it in the direction that I personally would have found most valuable. So Claude didn't know if I just wanted a update on general peptides or an update on GLP-1s, which is Ozempic, but I specifically just wanted an update on the health and wellness peptides like BPC 157, if you guys have heard of that. Now, I'm gonna pause the video and let Claude run. And once Claude is done running on your side, hit resume, and then we'll be able to see what Claude created. My Claude, Cowork, just finished running, and here is the output that it gave me. So it looks like there's a couple of different sections, kind of like we lined out in the prompt, where things stand now with peptides, what's changed in the last few weeks, what's coming up and worth knowing, and where to follow this for additional information. Now, once you have your output or your briefing, I want you to review these bullet points here just to make sure that this briefing is actually helpful and it was built in a way with the constraints that we gave it. And what's going to be interesting is this is a briefing, right? Well, we don't want to just know this one time. This is probably going to be something that we want to stay up to date about. So, like we talked about, if your briefing is about concerts in your area, well, is that a briefing that you're just going to want once and never have again? No, because concerts get updated all the time and you'd want to be able to stay up to date. What's going to be really cool is we're going to be able to take this briefing and turn it into something that updates regularly. Let's look. Before we jump into the concepts that we learned with that second problem that we just worked on, which is to create this briefing, I just want you guys to turn to page 10 and copy and paste this prompt into Claude. And I'll tell you what it is and what it's for in a second. So remember that I'm tracking peptides because I'm interested in them for my physical health. Okay, this prompt basically helps commit this knowledge to Claude's memory so that you don't have to ask it again. And the reason that you want to do this is because Claude is now going to understand that this is something important that it needs to remember about you, so it won't forget. Sometimes Claude actually remembers things by itself, so you don't need to do this, but this is just to ensure that it does remember. Now, there's 2 questions here that you can reflect on, which is what did the briefing get right and what did it miss? Please reflect on those, and then once you're finished, resume the video, and we're going to start jumping into the concepts that we learned for problem 2, which I think are going to be pretty interesting. If we think about the briefing that we built, what specific problem were we solving? It's like, hey, I have this problem that it takes a lot of work for me to stay up to date on peptides, And I constantly have to go to Google. I constantly have to create flags on Google Trends to keep up with what is going on in that given community. But all of that is manual and it takes a lot of work. What if there was a way where I could automate that process so that it saves me time from ever missing out on anything important? That was the problem that we addressed. And let's talk about the three different concepts that we worked on or learned from Claude Cowork that is really important to really have an amazing foundation for not only working with Claude Cowork, but just AI in general. Well, first one is web search. Claude can pull live information from the internet, not just what it learned during training. So it has the ability to go out and research the World Wide Web to find an answer to your question. This is very different than just using a chatbot that is not able to pull information from online because it makes it so much more useful. Also, if you think about why web search is so powerful, it's because if Claude doesn't know an answer, rather than saying, I don't know, it has the ability to go out and search the web to be able to find you that answer. And if you think about it, before, our parents or our grandparents would have to go out and go to the library to figure out something they didn't know. And then my generation, millennials, instead of going to the library, we could just go to Google. Well, now that has been taken even a step further because people can just have their agents do that research for them and they don't have to do anything at all. So that is why web search is such a fascinating concept that you need to make sure that you learn and understand. The second one is skills. So what do I mean by skills? Well, this topic we could honestly make probably like a 3-hour video on alone, but I'll give you the overview of it, and then you'll continue to learn more about skills as you work with Claude Cowork. Basically, Cowork has specialized abilities for particular kinds of work, making Word docs, slide decks, spreadsheets, PDFs, and dozens of role-specific tasks. What's amazing is that Claude reaches for the right one when the job calls for it. So you might be thinking, how did we use skills for this problem that we worked on earlier? Well, Claude has a skill that tells it how to create Word docs. If you think about the briefing that we made, well, the only way to have done that is if Claude was able to point towards that skill of how to make an organized and good Word doc. Really interesting. And where this starts to get really cool is you can basically build a skill for anything. So if you have a slide deck that you make every week, well, you build a skill telling Claude how you want it designed, what it's for, at what you do whenever you make it. And basically through some iteration, it can basically completely replace that task for you, which is so fascinating. Okay, I'm getting a little bit embarrassed because I'm starting to sweat and get out of breath a little bit, but I genuinely do and am so passionate about the application of AI in the world that we live today. So give me some grace, guys. Now, for the third and last concept that we reviewed from problem number 2, or that we used in problem number 2, is this concept of memory. So this is a fascinating one. Claude can remember things about you and your work across different sessions or chats that you have with it. So tell it once that you care about something, and it'll carry that forward in its memory. And you might be asking, okay, Timothy, that's cool. It has memory, but why is that important for me? Well, if you think about it, the more context that Claude has about you or what you're working on, the more useful that it will be to you. Everyone is unique and everyone has different circumstances. The advice and the information that works best for one person actually is completely different for another. That's why memory is so important. Now, those are the 3 concepts that we learned from session or problem number 2, web search, skills, memory. Let's move on to number 3, and this one is going to be an interesting one. We have this one-page briefing, but if you remember what I talked about earlier, let's actually have that update on its own. But here's the twist. We're not only going to have this briefing update on its own, we're going to turn this into a little bit of a dashboard and make it much more of a joy to interact with. And we're going to do that through the design of this briefing. So let's give it a heartbeat. If you move on to page 13, what I want you to do is copy and paste this prompt. So it says, take what you know about my interest in peptides, so my topic, build me a live artifact, a page I can reopen once a week and see what's new. It should pull fresh information from the web each time I open it, summarize what's happening, and surface anything notable that's changed recently. Okay, so let's see what that does. Oh, and it looks like I forgot to commit peptides to my memory earlier, but we should be fine. I'm not even following my own instructions in the workbook. Sorry, guys. All right, so I copy and pasted that. And then, oh, I think I missed a part. Oh, actually, no, I didn't. All right, so let's hit enter. Now, this is going to be really cool what Claude does. So I'm going to pause the recording here and let this run and pop it back up once it's finished. So let's see what it does. My dashboard has just finished being built by Claude, and this is what it looks like. Isn't this so much more aesthetically pleasing than the Word document that we had before? And also, B, it updates every week. So right now, the fresh updates are having an issue, but essentially this will update for me once a week so I can stay up to date. And obviously, since you did a different topic, yours looks completely different. What's interesting is if I wasn't making this YouTube video right now, basically to fix this, all I would do is in natural language tell Claude, hey, I'm getting an error and I'm going to paste this error into Claude and say, this is what's happening. Can you fix it? And then Claude will have a back and forth with you on how to fix it. But your dashboard should look fine. And if it doesn't, then don't worry about that for now for the purposes of this video that we're working on. Now, we have our dashboard completed. Moving on from page 13 to 14, what I want us to do is pick a look. And what do I mean by that? Well, we all have this dashboard that Claude just created us, but now how can we make it ours? This is where, in my opinion, AI gets so interesting. Well, what you can do is you can completely redesign this in a way that works for you. What I've done is I've given you some ideas on how you can completely shift the way that your dashboard looks like. And you can do it newspaper style, bento box style, where there are modular cards. You can just have a postcard style where it's just one big thing and lots of room. Below that, I've also given you a list of elements that you can adjust. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this mine by changing a few different elements. I'm going to turn mine into a little bit of a newspaper style. So I'm going to copy and paste that. And I'm going to say for the color, let's do New York Times. For the imagery, let's do small icon next to each item and have it be a Financial Times feel. I want you to take some time to think about what elements you want to use to pick a look. And please know you are not limited to what you see here on page 14 of your workbook. This is just to give you some ideas on in what way you want to build your briefing. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to let this run. So I'll pause the video and I'll resume it once mine has finished. Okay, mine has finished running. And look what we got, you guys. This looks so much better, in my opinion. I kind of like the feel of Financial Times if you guys have ever read any news or articles on that website. I hope yours looks as cool as this, or you're happy with the results. Also, just wanted to add one quick side note. I was getting an error here, and all I did was talk with Claude and say, hey, it says couldn't fetch a fresh edition, and here is the error message. And so Claude worked on fixing that error message for me, and now we have what we see in front of us. I hope yours is awesome as well. And what I really wanted to demonstrate to you guys is you really have unlimited freedom in where you want to take the way that you have built your briefing. I took it this direction, and I hope yours looks completely different. Now, what I want to review is we built this live dashboard that updates weekly. Well, what concepts did we learn from that? Well, there were pretty much two: artifacts and natural language iteration. For artifacts, this is essentially a concept in Claude, which is it is a persistent page that lives on your machine. It refetches data, which just means that the agent goes out and searches the online web and then comes back and then fills your briefing with the parameters that you have given it. And it stays there for weeks or months or however long you want it to keep updating. So it's not a one-time answer, it's a living view, which is really cool. And if you look in the top left-hand corner of Claude Cowork, you'll see live artifacts. So that's what we built. Now, the second concept, which is probably my personal favorite, is natural language iteration. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, you shape what Claude makes by talking. No menus, no scripting, no special syntax, just a plain English back and forth conversation. And the conversation is what is the editor. That was never possible before. That's what's so fascinating to me. I hope those two concepts made sense. Moving on from page 15 to 16, what I want you guys to do is take a second, pause the video, and reflect on the 3 different problems that we worked on, and think about ideas on what Claude Cowork can do for you with your workflow or your life. Ultimately, the way that you apply AI to your own work and life is what is going to create the most benefit for you. So for inspiration, I've added some examples of tasks that might start spinning some wheels in your brain for what you want Claude Cowork to do for you. Obviously, for every person, it's going to be completely different. So take some time to think. And once you have completed that, we can move on to page 17. And we're almost done, guys. To review everything that we learned and used today, we learned about folder access, web search, skills, memory, artifacts, natural language iteration, and we've only scratched the surface of what Claude Cowork can actually do. If we think about skills we haven't tried, well, Claude has a skill to create slides, PDFs, spreadsheets. You can give it the ability for role-specific skills that are catered for the work that you do. There's connectors for Cowork. So Cowork can connect to Gmail, Google Calendar, Slack, Drive, Notion, and many other platforms. Once connected, Claude can not only work locally on your computer, but it can work in tandem and in sync with those other programs. And that's where you'll start to get a huge unlock. We also have scheduled tasks that we didn't talk about. So Cowork can run on a schedule. For example, every morning, I want you to pull all of the finance data from QuickBooks and build me a report on anything that stands out or that I should keep my eye on. With that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this virtual workshop, I guess I'll call it. And I just hope that you stay curious with everything that you're learning and doing with AI. And I hope you enjoyed this style of video. For me personally, I have watched a bunch of tutorials on YouTube, and what I felt was missing was kind of this hands-on aspect that you have if you're going to like a workshop and then you have an accompanying workbook. So I thought, is there a way for me to emulate that virtually with YouTube? So that's why I wanted to shoot this video in this way. So please, 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 if this was helpful and you like this style, let me know down below in the comments and I can continue to do them in this way. I'm Timothy. I work in advanced analytics at a Fortune 500 company, and I love AI, especially the application of it. And I enjoy making YouTube videos. So if you're interested in all things Claude, please subscribe. Thank you so much.